Welcome to Spirits and Stories, a place where we slow things down and talk about the moments that shaped us. The stories behind the scars, the victories, the lessons. Every guest brings a journey. So settle in. This one's meant to be felt.
Hey, Mike, how you doing, man?
Hey, fine, thank you. Good to see you, Don.
That's awesome, man. So today we've got Mike, former law enforcement and fictional writer, and I'm looking forward to it, man. A couple topics that I am extremely interested in is crime and
I hope so.
writing. Yeah, absolutely, man.
That's right.
So
That's right.
give us a little bit of a background, man. Where did you kind of grow up, and what brought you into the law enforcement world?
I am from Long Island, but my family is New York City based. My father's from the Bronx, my mother's from Manhattan, and my older brother, my father, my uncle, my cousins were all New York City cops. And my brother, who became a lawyer, ended up becoming a Manhattan ADA. So,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, everybody in the family has kind of a police background or ADA law enforcement background, except for my mom. And
Man, it almost sounds like Blue Bloods.
It's very similar to Blue Bloods. Yeah, actually. Yeah. We had, yeah. But it wasn't,
man.
it's not based on my family, but it actually in real life, it's quite close. So yeah, it's a family tradition. I was very happy to go on the police force. It wasn't something I wanted to do my whole life. Matter of fact, I in college, I really didn't want to become a police officer. And after I graduated, I was having difficulty finding a job, and I kind of eased into it. And then once I got involved, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the people and I enjoyed the work. And so I ended up making a career out of it.
Okay. You know, I remember early in my military career, this had to be probably, I would say late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere around there. I remember I was considering getting out of the military, and the New York City Police Department, man, was going like from post to post all through the United States, recruiting law enforcement. And I remember looking at the salaries and everything else, and I was like, man, you know, six years on the job, and you're making like six figures. And I'm like, wow, you know. And then I looked at what the average cost and the average salary was in New York City.
Yeah, New York City is expensive. Yeah. We all had two jobs. I did a lot of security on the side, and a lot of my colleagues were involved in security companies and things. So it's hard to make it in New York City on a civil servant salary. Very expensive place.
I bet. Yeah, I bet. You know, however, I think, you know, as far as somebody who's learning policing, I would venture to guess that would be a great area to learn at, because you're going to see a lot of different things, from little things all the way up to major stuff, you know. And hopefully, as your knowledge base grows, then the severity of the problems, you know, and the complexion grows. But
well, I'm an old timer. I went on the job in 1987, and New York City had the crack epidemic, 88, 89, into the early 90s. In 1992, New York City had 2,000 murders. It was over 2,000 murders. So it was a crazy place, and a fantastic place to learn the job. And one of the things I discovered later on when I started doing international police work and police consulting, New York City has the best police force in the world, and it's actually for a bad reason. If you're a police officer in Germany and you become a homicide investigator, they only have like 20, 30 homicides a year in the whole country. You know, how many homicides are you going to do in Germany or England, Great Britain? They just, and someone like me coming up, I had a friend who came out of narcotics. He got his detective shield, and he showed up at the squad, and he had 4 homicides sitting on his desk. in Germany or Great Britain or some of these other Western European countries, you would do 20 years of investigative work before you get 1 or 2 homicide cases. So essentially we get good at it because we have so many of them. We're just so good at it because, and I say I haven't been with NYPD in a long time, but we're good at it because we have a lot of crime and we learn. And so we learn from all these, we learn from our mistakes. We have a patrol guide, used to be about as thick as a Bible, and now it's almost 2 Bibles. And essentially, it's a lessons learned. About more than half of that is these are very tragic things that happen, and now here are the steps to avoid those tragic things. So it's a great department to learn. And if you're talking about, I made an arrest 2 hours on the street. I went to Times Square, and I made an arrest. I was on the street 2 hours.
Wow. Yeah,
Times Square back then was crazy. Now it's like Disney World, and I'm glad it's Disney World. I don't want those days back.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes with a trend. Even in the military, I remember when 9/11 first happened, and our regimental commander came to us and was talking. And this is now February, March of 2002. So it's been going on for just a minute now. And our 1st battalion and 2nd battalion had all deployed. And I remember asking him, I said, hey, when are we going to get our chance? Just eager to get into the fight. And I remember him telling me, watch what you wish for because you might just get it. And, And 6 years later, I found myself saying, man, when is it somebody else's turn? I am tired, And I think it's the same way in the law enforcement world, because a lot of guests that I came on, they want that excitement, and then mid-career, latter career, they're like, man, I really wish that the worst thing I had to deal with was a drunk kid.
Yeah, there is a lot of boredom involved, especially on patrol. But if you're in a heavy precinct, you have these lulls, and it can go for a whole shift. Actually, back in those times, it was rare that it would go a whole shift, but you had something akin to what we call a quiet night. And cops were very superstitious. If you got in a patrol car and said, "Oh, it's quiet tonight," people would get angry. They would say, "What do you?" Because as soon as they say that, the radio starts crackling, and you're flying around, and you're getting into all kinds of stuff. But it was a very busy time back then. There was a lot of crime, and I'm really glad that it's not that way anymore. It really improved. It's getting bad again, but nothing like that late 80s, early 90s era when I came out of the academy and started doing patrol. It was an interesting place. You learn fast. Yeah.
I bet. The other thing too, I think that type of what you see on the TVs, right? And I know we're going to get into this when we dig into your book a little bit, but people grow up watching these cop shows and stuff like that, and they think that's what it's like, and they learn real quick that it's nothing like that, I had soldiers that told me they joined the military because they thought it was going to be like Call of Duty, like the video game Call of Duty, and they learned real quick it's not. It's hours and hours of boredom with minutes worth of excitement and adrenaline.
Okay, so I was going to say I don't know the military experience. I went directly from college into the police academy, so I didn't serve. I wish I did, but it's interesting that you guys kind of have the same thing where I know you train very hard for these shorter type of engagements.
It's not the people don't realize how much it takes out of you, just the adrenaline and your mind thought process and everything. When it's over with, it may have lasted 15, 20 minutes at the most, but it's exhausting. Like you played a full football game. And I'm sure it's the same way in law enforcement, going to a domestic call and you're walking up to the door and then you hear gunshots or you hear somebody screaming and your fight or flight is skyrockets.
When the adrenaline gets going, decision making goes down, and that's why I know the military is very strict on training and you relying on your training, because when bullets start whizzing past your head, you have to rely on your training. You don't want because your decision making is going to come way down. Your heart rate's going to go up, and there's all these physical, like Saving Private Ryan. I thought they really captured it. People getting like the camera had tunnel vision, trying to get it from the soldier's view. Cops have that in the most. Not like a combat. I don't want to do comparisons between combat and police work. I don't have the combat experience, but a lot of the physical stresses I think are similar, and it just happened a little bit differently. And thankfully, police we have a little bit different philosophy when it comes to particularly shooting combat type situations that we can take cover and wait for backup. Like where the military, they train you to like move and, go after where the shots are coming from. And we have well, we're not really heavily equipped. I never fired a long arm shotgun. If you handed me a shotgun, I would probably end up like Tim Walz trying to load it. I wouldn't know. We didn't carry shotguns in New York. I only shot a 9mm and revolver. I did get to play around in Kosovo. Some of the military guys, we were at the range and they let me shoot a machine gun. It was very interesting for me. But professionally, we're not trained for the heavy stuff. So that's why we kind of take cover and call in to emergency service or somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not any different than us. We do the same thing. We may be carrying rifles and have a sidearm, but realistically, when you get into that situation and you find out, hey, we're evenly matched. We got the same amount of number of people, or we're way under staffed for this assault. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to seek cover and call in for reinforcements or artillery or an aircraft, somebody, to help even these odds and put it in our favor. We're not dealing with, award-winning blue chip stocks and hopefully it's right. It's you're either right and you live or you're wrong and you die. So, you want the odds in your favor as much as you can.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. I know throughout your career, you've done some training and you're on to bigger and better things. Where did your interest in writing come from?
I am from the Irish tradition, corner of the bar storytelling. That's where I'm coming from. And I gave up drinking 11 years ago. So I'm not in the bar telling stories anymore. And when you stop drinking, you have a lot more time on your hands. And my hope was that I could take the old corner of the bar Irish storytelling and see if that could translate into a book. And I also thought that the story about the police missions in Kosovo needed to be told. And nobody really knows about it, except for people, let's say, who were reading the newspaper at that time. And so this is 25 years ago. People who were following the news might have known that police officers from around the U.S. were deployed to Bosnia. They were deployed to Haiti. They were Indonesia also, East Timor. And these are all United Nations missions. And I went on the one to Kosovo. And we worked in Kosovo. There were about 60 different countries there and several thousand police officers, because when that conflict ended, the Serbian, mostly ethnic Serbian police, they left. They went up north above what was then the administrative line. It's now the country's border. And they had no police force. So we didn't go in there as advisors. In Bosnia, we went there as advisors. We were unarmed. And we just went in there to try and help the police have legitimacy and make sure that there wasn't any really bad decisions based on ethnicity with the policing. And we were heavily involved with training. But Kosovo, I wore a gun belt. I made arrests in Kosovo, and we were enforcing the law. But the problem in Kosovo was they had no judiciary. They had really one or two prisons that held a minimal number of people. And so it was a really difficult place to walk into. You have all these different officers from all over the world. They have different levels of training. We all spoke English, so English was I had a huge advantage on the UN mission because the language for the mission is English, and so I'm a native speaker, and I used to help out my.
This episode is brought to you by Barracks Media, where your online presence becomes a real asset. Barracks Media builds professional websites for podcasters, creators, authors, and small businesses who are ready to be taken seriously. Not templates, not cookie-cutter pages. Real platforms built to grow with you. Whether you're launching a podcast, promoting a book, or building a brand, your website should work as hard as you do. We design sites that convert listeners into followers and followers into clients. Visit barracksmedia.com and turn your idea into a home on the web.
My colleagues, a lot of them spoke English really well, but and I speak Spanish, and I know how difficult it is to write in Spanish. You know, it's a really different thing to hold a conversation in Spanish and now have to write a report in Spanish would terrify me. So when my colleagues had to write reports in English, give me that. You know, in New York, we'd scratch these out like in 5 minutes. You know, there's like standard kind of language. Perpetrator did without permission or authority take, property from, and you're describing a robbery, and then, I mean, you just tell me what the crime is, and then I fill in time, date, and everything. I can do it in 5 minutes. And some of my colleagues would spend 2 hours, trying to write that report.
Yeah.
So it was an advantage being a native English speaker.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that. I never really thought about that. My time in Bosnia, like I said, I believe it was like 98 is when I was there, and 97, 98, somewhere around there. But my whole job was they were back to rebuilding, so I went out every single day with our scout platoons, and we pulled over. We had, checks and cars that came through it. If they had the wrong license plates on them, we would hook up to them, tow them to the local police or local military area. And then they would get a ticket and make them register their vehicle, because that's what we were doing. We were trying to reestablish a government. I never thought about the law enforcement side. I was really young, I was probably, 22, 20, 21, 22, somewhere around there. And it just never dawned on me that we were doing what a police force should be doing. And we never seen a police force,
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody understands what war does to countries. It doesn't matter who wins or loses. The one thing guaranteed is when it's over with, the country will become a third world country again.
Yeah,
and
it was pretty chaotic there. Yeah. It wasn't nice. Kosovo, as far as police missions went, the people who initially got there in '99 and my contingent class, we arrived in 2000, like September 2000. There was hardly any food on the shelves, and the roads were all chewed up. A lot of the roads had military vehicles transiting them, and those roads just kind of buckled. And so it was off-roading everywhere you went. And we didn't have really much heat, or electricity was only a couple hours a day. Running water was kind of a luxury if you had it. So it was a hardship. And then eventually things just improved and improved. And later on, it was a wonderful place. Pristina and some of those surrounding cities, they're lovely now. They were really tough places to live shortly after the war, especially, you take electricity and water for granted, until you don't have it. Yeah. I mean, you can do that when you're camping. That's cool, but not when you're living there for a year.
Yeah. Yeah. We drove from Hungary there, and I can't remember the name of that river that you crossed going from Croatia into Bosnia. But I remember when I crossed, man, it was
the Danube. Like, if it's a big river, the Danube?
It is a big river. Yeah, it is a big river.
The Danube runs all the way through that whole region. Yeah.
I know the bridge there was blown as soon as the war started from the Croatian side.
Yeah, they blew all the bridges. They didn't want it
to spill over. Yeah. And I remember when we came off that bridge to the left, it's weird the things that you remember, but I remember seeing a school and all the 50 cal hole rounds that had been shot into that school. And I remember seeing people burning their stuff in their yard to stay warm, because, like you said, electricity was, not constant. And man, the kids, if it wasn't concrete or asphalt, they didn't walk on it. Nobody walked into their yards because of all the landmines.
It's heavily mined.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's crazy the things that we take for granted and don't even think about. And I don't remember seeing my times there. I don't remember seeing law enforcement. I don't remember seeing like medical ambulances and stuff like that. And it's hard. The things that we
not
take
many.
For
yeah,
granted.
there's same. Yeah,
I just
there's still bullet holes in the wall. I was in Sarajevo about 6 months ago, and it was my first time there. I traveled a lot in former Yugoslavia, but Bosnia was one place I didn't really spend much time at all there. And I got to go to Sarajevo for a week, and I saw a lot of the bullet holes they left. I don't know to memorialize the war there, but that was a beautiful city. I mean, it was more interesting to watch the news, the old clips of the shelling that was happening from the mountains, because they got these beautiful mountains kind of pressed up against the city, and the Serbian forces were up in the mountains, and the city was under siege for a long period of time, and it was pretty interesting. To see where World War I started. They have the car that Archduke Ferdinand was driving in. They have it on a corner, or at least it's a replica, or I couldn't tell if it was the original or a replica, but that was kind of interesting. And just seeing, bullet holes, and that they were coming from pretty close by where the siege was occurring.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I never got the opportunity to actually go to Kosovo. I know people that went to some of those areas. What was it about the law enforcement there that made you want to kind of help tell their story?
Well, we created a police force from scratch. I mean, they had no police force, and the internationals came in, and the U.S. probably had the most influence in setting up the police academy. But we essentially trained up a police force. And when I arrived, probably the first graduating class from the police academy were coming out onto the streets. And so I was a field training officer in a town called Lipjan, which is just south of Pristina. And but what I discussed earlier, it was hard to be a field training officer there because Kosovo didn't have much crime at all. They had really big and people get a little sensitive up there about using the word terrorism, but they had to go. The Serbs they had horrible things happen both in Bosnia and in Kosovo with these paramilitaries. They let these paramilitaries loose. They wreaked havoc, and then after the war was over, I was there for the payback. So when people read the book, my hope is that people aren't saying, "Oh, you're showing only what bad things the Albanians did," and they were the victims before that time. But that's what I was there for, because it was the payback. The Serbian forces, the Yugoslav army went in. They allowed these paramilitaries to go in and commit atrocities all over the country. When they pulled back and the police force pulled back, I come in as a police officer. My colleagues are from Austria, Egypt, Jordan, Finland, Fiji. I kid you not. We had two guys from Fiji. I had Northern Irish, 6 Royal Ulster Constabulary guys from Northern Ireland. And there's some kind of interesting interaction in the book because I'm an Irish Catholic. My origin is Irish Catholic. And these guys are, Belfast, Northern Irish Protestants. And I had a good time working with them. Actually, there was like 7 of them. A couple of them were pretty bigoted, actually. And I recount that in the book. But the other guys, they were fantastic and really, really good cops, too. They were tough guys. They were really tough.
Yeah.
And we had riots there. So who better to do riots with than Royal Ulster Constabulary guys? They liked riots. It was... and it's something I mentioned in the book, like we knew a riot was going to happen, and these guys are like, let's go. They were psyched. And I'm like, I don't even want to go to a ride, man. I'll do it because I'm duty bound. I'll go because I'm duty bound. But it's not going to make my week. So that was fun aspect. The international officers there. I had to. And the funny thing about the United Nations, they always put I don't know how they came up with this, but they would find someone who really spoke English very poorly and put them on the radio. So our radio was a lot of fun. We had a Jordanian officer, and he would say, "Oh, Habibi," he would say, "My friend, you cannot imagine." And so he pressed the mic. So you hear him press the mic, and then he go. And you wait for the exhale because he's going to take a drag from a cigarette. My friend, you cannot imagine. We have a problem. You go to Nick 7, and there's a problem there. And you go there and you kick them. You say it on the radio. You go there and you kick them. And we're like, yeah, okay. The guy was a great guy. I mean, it was just a blast. He said,
yeah.
And it was funny because we would mix our lingo, like the Northern Irish guys had this. They would say "you cheeky bastards" or "you cheeky," cheeky was the word that they used, and "fuck's sake" was another. Like they had this terminology, like other people would adopt it, and like my friend from Jordan who was on the radio, he'd say, "My friend, you go and you kick these cheeky bastards," like the Northern Irish. So Muppets was another one. The Northern Irish guys, they describe people as Muppets. These Muppets don't know what they're doing. And I came away from there calling people Muppets, and the one
I can imagine.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I can imagine that, you guys and Irish are looking at some of these other officers and just shaking their head because there has to be plenty of crime in Ireland too,
Oh yeah.
That's not they didn't grow up soft in Ireland, and
no, they're tough,
with
man.
war and everything
they were
else.
Tough guys, and I had a really good time with them. Back then I was drinking still, so we would go out for drinks, and working with them was a pleasure. I thought the Finns were great because the Finnish battalion had my area, Lipion, and they were a little bit strange. The way they talk was very interesting because I don't know if you ever heard a Finnish person speaking Finnish.
I have not.
It's stranger than Chinese. They go like, and one of my unfortunate, I don't know if it's a claim to fame. I gave them the nickname the Duckatas because they sound when they talk like and so I heard one of my friends say, "Yeah, we got to go tell the Duckatas that and he means the Finnish, but they were good sports because they know that we were goofing on them about their just strange kind of it's not even an accent, it's the language, and they were very nice. They let us go into their cafeteria, into their mess hall. And they had these saunas, like the sauna is a big thing with the Finns. And they let a lot of us use the saunas. They let us use their weight room. So I was happy that we had Finnish battalion working our area. That's who we had to call if we had some trouble that got really big. We would call on Finnish battalion to come. I would prefer to be in the American sector. And in the book, I discussed that where my protagonist really wants to go to Geelong because they have a PX there that's the size of Walmart, a Cam Steel, and it's just you got at that time was the big red one. If you call for help, the big red one is coming, and that's a good feeling. Because in other places you call for help, the Italians or the French, they might want to finish their lunch before they get in their vehicles to go help you, so.
No, I can't even imagine relying on the French.
Yeah. Well, they were up in North Mitrovica. They were in a pretty tough part of the country because North Mitrovica, it was predominantly Serbian, and on the other side of the Ibar River was Albanian, and they had a bridge that connected it, and it was just trouble there. all the time. Yeah. That was a really difficult place to work. I worked in the second most difficult place, Lipion, because Lipion was mixed. It was a mostly Serbian town, but the village, it was surrounded by big villages. I shouldn't say big villages. They look like small villages, but there's a lot of people living there. Mm-hmm. And traditionally, Albanian households, they have large families and they live in compounds. So I remember going to a job and there's like a high wall and you slide open, and I saw dozens of kids, and they were like, "Yeah, that's just two families living there, two brothers. They have like a compound." So there's the Albanians maybe outnumbered the Serbians in Lipion, but they were all in the villages around it, and so that's where the friction was. And then in North and South Mitrovica, there was a lot of friction between the ethnicities.
Well, let's dig into a little bit of your book. Kind of give everybody an idea of what your book takes place. I know it's fiction, and yes. Let's kind of dig into.
Sure. I set out to do a MASH 4077 type comedy, and for your younger listeners, MASH was a book which became a movie in the 1970s and then became a TV series that ran all through the 70s and early 80s. Essentially, that was about doctors in Korea. And so they were dealing with wartime. And so it had that kind of serious side, but there was a lot of comedy with them at the camp. And Donna, I mean, one of my patrol partners in Kosovo was a Russian psychiatrist. He was a police psychiatrist. He'd never done patrol. I'm driving around. This guy's a nice guy. We're driving around. I said, "Hey, where did you work?" Well, he said, he was mainly like administrative type things. And I was like, "No, where did you do patrol, or were you an investigator or anything like that?" He said, "No, I'm a psychiatrist, a police psychiatrist." And he had two jobs. One was interviewing people to come on the job, and then also working with officers who were having problems. He was doing those types of cases also, but he never did patrol. And so I'm thinking between the Irish guys and the Jordanian guy on the radio and having a Russian psychiatrist as a partner, I could find gold, comedy-wise. I thought, this is comedy gold. But probably my mistake was, as far as making a comedy goes, I have some brutal murders in there. And they didn't jive very well with the book. They're pretty and they're actual cases.
This show is part of the Barracks Media Network, built by veterans, creators, and storytellers who believe stories change lives. Barracks Media produces podcasts, books, and digital content that amplify voices worth hearing. We help creators launch, grow, and monetize their message without losing their soul. If you've got a story in you, or a show in your head, go to barracksmedia.com and start building something that lasts.
I did change the name of the villages. I did a lot of changes for various reasons. I didn't want to get into the real finer parts of the case, information that I do about the case, but they're real cases. And I put them in there. And so when it came time for my beta readers to read it, they said, the comedy thing just doesn't work with the murder. But they liked the suspense. It became a suspense thriller, and they liked that better. And so I took a lot of the comedy out, and I really worked on the suspense thriller aspects of it and solving the case. So these actual crimes probably done by several different splinter groups from the Kosovo Liberation Army. So the Kosovo Liberation Army, they were not doing the payback against the Serbs who remained in Kosovo. It was, I would say, a real diehard. Maybe they had a KLA background, but they the KLA put down their weapons. A lot of them joined the police force, and so in the book, I have a rookie that I'm training. He was a war hero in the Kosovo conflict with the Kosovo Liberation Army, and so that's created kind of an interesting kind of situation where I'm working with a guy who's a former Kosovo Liberation Army guy, and people are shooting bazookas and throwing hand grenades on people's lawns to terrorize Serbs who remained, and not just Serbs. These kind of hardcore leftovers, they killed their Albanian opponents. So they were Albanian political opponents who got killed by them. And so this is what was going on when I was there. So my hope is that people who really are keen or astute and they know the situation, I hope they don't look for an angle, because quite frankly, I really enjoyed working there. I love the Albanian people, and I had good Albanian friends up there. Serbs are great, and I know they did the most atrocities, but I'd sip Rocky with Serbian people there, and I didn't want to take a side. I just wanted to kind of relay what this all looked like from the eyes of an American police officer.
Yeah.
So I try to make a comedy. The beginning of the book remain the same. So you're a writer. You're familiar with the Campbell's hero journey. So for your listeners, Campbell hero journey, you have this person. They start off, and then they get an invitation. So Harry Potter lived under the stairway. Then he gets an invitation to Hogwarts, and he finds out he's a wizard. And then you have a protagonist, Harry Potter. He has allies, Dumbledore, and the villain is Voldemort. And same thing with Star Wars. He's a farmer, and then some droid tells him, about Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he gets an invitation to go on the adventure. And then he becomes a Jedi, and you have people helping him, and then you have people against him. And so this Campbell's hero journey accounts for like 75% of all of the classic stories in the world. I tried to do that formula. Essentially, the reason I left was because went to Kosovo was because I was single and I was seeking adventure. I thought it'd be a great adventure. I'm just somebody, people who say, "Oh, whoever dies with the most toys wins." Yeah, remember that bumper sticker?
Yeah.
I kind of felt like whoever dies with the best stories wins. So I'm like,
I agree. Let's
go to Kosovo. So that's not compelling for the protagonist, loosely based on me. It's not an autobiography or a memoir, anything like that. But it is loosely based on me. And I just treated it as like he needs a better reason to go to Kosovo. So I had two actual police mistakes, big mistakes that caused problems. And one of them was a lost police radio, and the other, and I don't know if you want me to tell that, but essentially, my police radio, it got lost, and then we're driving in the patrol car in Manhattan, and we hear hello, and we're like, what the hell's on? The way it got lost was I put it on the roof of the car, and I'm filling out paperwork, and then I gave the paperwork back, and I drove off on the roof of the car. I mean, who hasn't done that in their life? Yeah. The radio fell off, and then I realized the radio's not on my belt. And so the woman broadcasting, she had this Dementos New York accent. She's like, hello. It sounded like Joe Pesci's sister, like, what? Like there's a central dispatch, like, you know what the message? And then they started saying an alarm and unauthorized transmission. And then she just kept talking. She would shut up. And she started talking to she's switching the channels. And I'm describing in the book, I say she spoke to the Bronx and Brooklyn and Staten Island. She didn't, because that radio only covers Manhattan, but she spoke to all of Manhattan. And that really happened. And that kind of hurts the protagonist, JB's career. The second story that I wanted to damage the protagonist a little more, so that when the invitation to go to Kosovo comes, he's like, I'm ready to go. I'm out of here. So the other one was a story relayed to me by my friend. He's my next door neighbor. He's an NYPD homicide lieutenant. And he knew I was writing the book. And I said, you have a story that someone really damaged their career but funny at the same time. I think I asked him for that when I was writing the comedy. This was when I was really looking for more comedic type things. And he said, I got to tell you, this one from one of his relatives in Florida. He went to a crime scene, and the crime scene unit hadn't arrived yet, and he had to wait for them because they were busy on another job. So they roped off the scene, and it was like a trench, but it wasn't a canal. It was just a trench, and he's guarding this, and he didn't realize that like 25 miles north of where he was, there was a massive downpour of rain, and that in Florida, they open up all these different gates, and the water came rushing down, and the body got washed away while he was guarding it. So he's on the crime scene, and he loses the body. So the crime scene arrives, like, where's the body? They're like, it got washed into the lake. So I use that. I put that true story, but it didn't happen in New York. And it didn't happen to JB, but I put that one as like the second straw that broke the camel's back to send JB on the hero's journey.
Yeah. It's funny when you talked about trying to make it a comedy, right? The one thing I'm confident on is that most law enforcement, first responders, firefighters, soldiers, we all kind of have a very dark sense of humor,
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of it is because that's how we deal with some of the stuff that we see day in, day out. And it's hard to relay the comedy that you see in that type of stuff,
That's true.
And get it across to somebody who doesn't deal with this day in and day out and see, there is some funny situations that happen in some serious situations, and if you look for them and you can separate yourself from what's going on, absolutely. I had a soldier who was a paramedic, and some of the stories that he told me, would not go well with most civilians, but I laughed my ass off.
Yeah. The book, for your listeners, I have to say it's men's fiction. The guys that have read it loved it. Women are about 50-50. About 50% of the women really enjoyed it, but like 50% they didn't like it. At least in the early stages, these were mostly friends and family, so they wouldn't exactly tell me why, but the guys enjoyed it. I mean, I consider it men's fiction. There's not a category called men's fiction. There's a big category called women's fiction, but men tend not to read fiction. They're not. And there was an article in the New York Times about this where men don't read fiction. They love like true crime. They love autobiographies. They love books about war. I read Black Hawk Down. I read Lone Survivor. Like, I like these books too. This is what maybe the only true men's fiction writer that I know is Nelson DeMille. I love Nelson DeMille. I actually copied his style, because I put the protagonist, J.B. Byrne, in first person. So you're in his head. He's talking. He's telling you the story. But the antagonist is in third person until they meet. And that's what Nelson DeMille did with John Corey. But the main difference between the funny stuff with John Corey was that DeMille was really good at wisecracking. Like, this detective is very funny, and he's wisecracking and tells jokes, whereas the comedy from J.B. Byrne is more situational, more like crazy situations. Talking, getting drunk with his Russian psychiatrist, and hanging out with the Northern Irish guys, and so that's maybe the main difference comedy-wise. So I would say, if you're a DeMille fan, if you like the John Corey books, I think you would really enjoy this book, because I tried to copy a lot of what DeMille did, just different experience, so.
Yeah. Yeah. It is really, you're spot on there. Even myself, I read a lot of, biography type stuff, and I love documentaries. I'd rather watch a good documentary than a fictional movie. And so what you're saying about, most men, you're spot on. That very is true. And then when you add these kind of things to it, I think where that falls into is the category, like you're going to get a lot of probably like law enforcement type people that are going to be interested in these kind of books, because
I hope so. But
I think so.
An author friend of mine who writes police type stories, something he pointed out and we laughed about was that he said cops don't read that much. Not that they don't read, like they don't read fiction. Definitely don't read fiction. Right. So they're a tough audience. So, and one of my other friends made fun of me. He's like, who's your target audience? And I'm thinking, police, maybe military types. And he said, why is your target audience people who don't read that much? Maybe I should have put a feminine angle in there somewhere and try to appeal to women, because women are voracious readers of fiction, but it's just not that story. It's a real dude adventure. It's like all men, you're over in 5,000 miles from home and all this stuff is going on. And so that's I had to be, it actually hurt me a little bit trying to be true to the story. The ending was really hard for me, because I kept thinking, well, would that have really happened? And it's fiction. You don't have to write, what would really happen. You want to write to keep the audience entertained, to keep them, glued. And I struggled a lot with some of the scenes in there, because in my mind, I almost was thinking like a memoir, like, oh, I can't say this would, this wouldn't have gone down like this, so it kind of maybe I did that to myself. Maybe somebody else, a more accomplished writer of fiction would have no problem just saying, they were explosions and, a medevac and all that, but.
Well, let me ask you this. I know for me, like, even as a kid, before I went in the military, my book choices was a lot of like Vietnam War story type, even fictional Vietnam War story. But that era, just for whatever reason, even today, it still really just attracted my attention. And even after 20 years in the military, I still like reading, those kind of stories, fiction or nonfiction, either one. But I still find myself liking that area. The part that is important to me is I don't care if the storyline is accurate, but the uniform better be correct, and the verbiage better be correct. Words that a soldier's going to use and stuff like that. When you wrote your book, did you find yourself saying, those same types of things, making sure that the life choices that a person's going to make in that career, the words, the language that they're going to use, and how they're going to talk to each other, was that important to you as well as writing the story?
Because in New York we don't say badge, we say shield, and I think in the book I make an exception there because people know the badge. So I think I did refer it as a badge, but I almost didn't want to type that. It's the shield, and the rank of detective sergeant, because detective is such a kind of glorified rank, but there's no rank detective sergeant in the NYPD. You're either a detective or you're a sergeant. You might be a sergeant who does detective work, but you're not a detective sergeant. But I see that on TV and movies, and they're very small things. It's fine. Yeah. I'm much further away now from New York City police. I imagine if any NYPD cops or even some retired cops probably looking at me like, who the hell is that guy? I've been out for a long time. It was a wonderful experience. And I wanted to kind of record that for history. And I gave a lot of thought to a memoir, and I wasn't even up to chapter 3 before I realized I was boring, as a memoir guy, even with all this interesting stuff. I needed to have the freedom to make stuff fiction, to just say, it's fictional, and then give me the freedom to embellish a little bit or omit a little bit, but the book is based on real events. And that's actually what like I said earlier, it undermined the comedic aspect. Was that these were pretty brutal crimes, and they did happen while I was there.
Yeah. Well, before we get into where everybody can get the books and follow you and all that stuff, what's next? Are you planning on making this a series, or do you have other books in mind that you would like to start working on?
I plan to write another book. I just haven't gotten around to it. The protagonist in the book has ADD, and that's loosely based on me. When I was a child, I had ADD, and I think I mostly grew out of it. A lot of people do grow out of their ADD. Like, I don't have it like when I was a kid. I couldn't concentrate at all as a kid. I didn't have the ADHD. I didn't have any behavioral problems, but I was always sitting in a classroom looking at the teacher, and my brain was surfing in Hawaii. I was not taking in what the teacher was saying unless it was really interesting for me. And then I would take in, what they were saying. But I eventually managed to graduate from college and get a master's degree. So you can't, but I had to work a little bit harder. The master's degree was the easiest because I was 35 years old and I was really interested in the topic. I have a master's in international terrorism. So I was reading those books and I was fascinated, like the old Bruce Hoffman book. And there's several authors that I was digging it, and I was enjoying writing papers. So the ADD factor makes it, I don't have it where I would be taking those amphetamines or anything like that. But I sometimes wish I could take the amphetamines. I get palpitations, but if I could take those amphetamines and sit down, I could probably knock out a whole novel and no problem. But it just takes me a long time. So that's a very long-winded answer, but it would take me a long time to finish it. But I have no problem. I really want to see if this book can have a certain level of success. I would definitely be encouraged. And if I go to Ukraine as a police consultant, I want to see how that goes. I'm getting kind of older now, and I'm getting closer to retirement. But if the right position opens up in Ukraine, hopefully that conflict will be resolved. And The Land of Broken Toys, Ukraine might be the next book. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm still out. I'm still out in the field doing this stuff. I was in Mexico, writing curriculums for police academies. I was in Saudi Arabia for 2 years. I'll tell you this joke. I don't know if you have time for a joke, but this one's been around the internet. It's a little bit of an old joke, but maybe your listeners are I hope they're not all familiar with this one. But do you ever hear the one about the talking dog?
Maybe. I don't know.
Guy's driving down a country road, and he's really tired, and he wants to get out and stretch, and he sees a sign that says "Talking Dog for Sale." He says, "You know what? Let me go take a look at this. This might be a good story for the pub." He pulls over, drives up the farmer's road, sees the farmer, gets out of the car. He said, "Hey, you have a talking dog for sale?" He said, "Yep." He said, "Where is he?" He said, "Over there." He goes over to a fence, and there's a dog sitting behind the fence. He said, "So you can talk, huh?" The dog's like, "Yeah, I can talk. I've been talking since I was a puppy." The guy's like, "Oh my God." He says, the dog said, "CIA discovered me. They sent me overseas. My mission was to befriend certain people, get in the room, listen to everything that's going on, and report back." He said, "I did that for a couple of years, and then I got tired of being overseas. So I came back to the U.S., and I was working for the DEA, FBI, same thing. Get in the room, befriend somebody, get in the room, listen to what they're saying, repeat the conversations back. And then after that, I started working for, I wanted to settle down, have some puppies. So I'm working for the local police and county. And now I'm retired here on the farm." And the guy's just blown away. He turns to the farmer. He said, "How much do you want for that dog?" He said, $20. He said, "You want $20 for that dog?" He said, "That dog's a fucking liar. He didn't do any of that stuff."
Yep, absolutely.
So the reason I say that is because I'm saying all the places that I've been, right? I sound like maybe I'm an Intel guy. No, I've been involved with programs that deliver equipment and training from the Department of Justice and the State Department. We deliver equipment and training and things like that. I'm not doing any, but this actually worked to my advantage when I had. The reason I stopped drinking was atrial fibrillation. And I went to New York. I was working in Belgrade. I flew to New York, and I'm seeing one doctor. He was treating me for gout, and this is like a drinker's, gout and atrial fibrillation are both from too much drinking. And I said, "Hey, overseas. I got to get on a plane in a week, and I really need to see a cardiac, electric specialist that handles atrial fibrillation." And he started talking to me about what I did, and I was like, "Yeah, Kosovo. I've been in Saudi Arabia, and he just automatically thought I was doing wet work, for some outfit in the CIA." And I'm like, "No, I deliver training, I deliver equipment." He's like, "Yeah, And but it worked in my favor because I wasn't able to get an appointment with like this guy was at NYU. He called up the top cardiologist there and said, "This guy's overseas. We had a 9/11 here, and we need to take care of people who are taking care of us." And I heard, I'm just kind of giving you the gist of the conversation. I don't remember his exact words, but I was thankful that this guy thought I was doing a lot more for the country. I mean, I'm serving the country, but not like a super sleuth. And I was in the top cardiac guy for atrial fibrillation. I was in his office the next day, setting up an appointment to get I had the ablation procedure done, and I was back on the plane to Belgrade. So I was thankful that the doctors there, 9/11 kind of scarred a lot of New Yorkers. And so I was thankful that the guy, that doctor thought I was, really, doing something to help America, and that he wanted to help me. It was nice.
Yeah. Well, why don't we go ahead and tell everybody where they can find your books and where they can follow you and learn more and all that good stuff.
It's on Amazon. It's called The Land of Broken Toys, Kosovo. Let's see.
Yep.
And it's on a couple other sites. I did the print Amazon Direct. Yep. So I direct print. So when somebody orders it, they print it out and send it out. That's the setup I have, but it's available. It's more costly. I've seen it available in other places, and maybe even Barnes and Noble. I'm not 100% sure. I probably should have checked that before it came up. But the book, I would buy it from Amazon. Is all I can say. And my email address is on there. I'm using the protagonist name as my email address, jbbyrne@com. And so my email address is jbbyrne_NYPD, all lowercase, all one word, @gmail.com. And the website is the same, jbbyrne_NYPD.com. No,
awesome.
But I hope that anybody who reads it who want, because so far a lot of the people who read it had questions about what's actually happened and what didn't happen or whatever, and I'm happy to answer those questions if you go on the website and or send an email. I'll put it on the blog. I'll answer on the blog. Or if you have any thoughts about the book, I'm more than happy to communicate with the readers. Hopefully, guys, start reading some fiction.
Yeah. Well, I hope all of you guys got something out of this. Make sure when you go buy, when you go buy the book and you get it, make sure you leave a review. It helps authors out tremendously. It's very important with the algorithms of the way Amazon works. So make sure that if you buy, you read, then you go back and give a review. And I appreciate all of you guys that listen to the show and you support us and support the guests that come on. make sure you reach out to Mike and ask, because he's doing some amazing things in real life as well. So hit him up, ask some questions, and learn a little bit about all the things that go on outside of our country and our world. So,
hey, Donald, thank you for your service. Just a message out to your audience. I know you have a big audience, former military, and I always, when I can, say thank you for your service.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Well, hope all of y'all guys have a great day.
And to you as well. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Don't forget, don't let the day kick your ass. Kick the day's ass.